Hey folks, this is Angel Cartagena, and I want to share with you another edition of AC's Life Coaching Moments. I hope that this really blesses you, as I want to share a story with you that really impacted me tremendously when it happened. And so it happens that I took my car in for servicing one day, and as you know, one of the common experiences that we go through when we take our cars in, especially if it's a long repair and you have to wait for it, is you sit in their waiting room and they usually have the television on and it's just so unappealing. And most of the time I take reading with me, or I'll take my earbuds and listen to music or talk to somebody on the phone. I just I just don't care for what's on television. But this one particular day, it was on a television show by a therapist. You would know who it is if I said his name. And it was an interesting situation. Um, so there's a couple that is going through some struggles, and they agree to let the crew from this television show to set up hidden cameras throughout their house. And what we were treated to was horrific. The husband of the couple struggled tremendously with alcoholism, and I will say this: in the spectrum of troubles, the one thing at least I was glad is that he wasn't one of those drunks that got violent or would get really rambunctious or whatever. He just, the alcohol would just basically make him like useless. But what was really shocking was he's married to this woman who's about half of his size, and she would beat him up terribly when he would get drunk. I'm talking about, this was physical abuse. He would need medical attention after some of these beatings. And so the therapist brings them on because he wants to find out, for the guy, what is it that leads you to drink the way you do? And of course, there was nothing surprising if you work with people, either, like I've worked with people in the past as a pastoral counselor. I now work with them as a life coach. There was nothing really surprising. Like, this man experienced a trauma in his life that led him to what I call the pit of despair. And once you have a trauma, whether it be a big traumatic event or something that is a result of years, you slide into the pit of despair, and in there you will find anger, fear, self-loathing, bitterness, desperation. Everything that's negative. And if you don't figure out that you need help getting out of the pit of despair, one of the almost consistent ways that people relate to this or react to it, respond to it, is by self-medicating. And that self-medication can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it could be illicit sexual affairs. There are just all sorts of negative ways that we can respond when we have fallen into the pit of despair. And then, of course, there were the issues of, woman, why of all the things, right? Like, you don't empathize with him, but then again, there are a lot of people who can see why you would be disappointed. But then, why not set boundaries and say, look, if you don't get this under control, you need to leave the house, or we can't stay married because I can't deal with this. No. Your response is to physically beat the man up. And so there was some really deep. It was a really deep conversation, and I have to say, it was one of the few times I was really interested in what I was listening to. But then things took a incredibly wild turn. So this therapist says, "Hey, man," to the husband, you can really get this under control. Like, you can defeat this, but you need some help. And what we're going to do is we're going to send you to a place where you'll detox, and you'll have some therapists, and they'll help you work through some things, and then set some routines and habits in place to help you cope with this on a long-term basis. And here's where the shock came. The wife said no. She didn't want him going to this program. And so now we had a whole other debriefing to have to do, like investigation. Like, wait a minute, woman. Like, he gets drunk, you beat him up. What? And so, but after going back and forth, what we found out is she was afraid. Here's what she was afraid: that he was going to get sober and then figure out, I don't want to be married to this woman, and divorce her, and that she would be left alone. And it took some while to convince her that if she allowed not only him to go get help, but then we're going to help you by getting you some help. That if the two of you get help, one of two things is going to happen. The worst thing is both of you get healthy and decide we don't want to be in this marriage anymore, and you go your separate ways, but at least you're living in a healthy way. And by the way, that health was needed, because even if you do get divorced, because this is what made all of this the more tragic, they had kids, and these kids were watching all of this stuff. Like, they were really watching all of this. And so they were like, at the worst, you get a divorce, but at least you'll be able to co-parent and you'll be able to live healthy lives. But then they made her to see this. One of the other possibilities could be is that both of you get healthy, and now the two of you are free to work on making your marriage so much better that it will be everything that you wanted it to be when you got married. And so I share this with you just for this. What are you scared of? What about the unknown scares you so much that you're willing to live in your current state of dysfunction in your life? That you right now are living in a way that is not only hurting you, but people who you love, but you won't change because you're afraid, and you're afraid of the unknown. And so I want you to think about this, that most times when we have fear of the unknown, it's simply because it is unknown. It's not that there's anything on the other side waiting for us. One of my favorite stories was Les Brown was talking about living in this neighborhood where every day on his way home from school, he would get chased by this dog. And he talks about the fact that one day he just got tired, man, and the dog came after him, and he turned around and he stomped his foot and he said, "No!" To the dog, and the dog stopped. But here's the thing, the dog opened his mouth when he stopped, and he didn't have any teeth. So Les is laughing because he's like, the only thing this dog could have done to me was gum me. But he learned an important lesson from that situation, which is fear is, listen, false expectations appearing real. False expectations appearing real. So listen, my friend, if you're struggling with something, get some help. Both this man and this woman in this relationship were living truly in a living hell. They were in a hell, but listen, it was a living hell of their own making. And it simply was because they didn't get help to deal with the underlying, because what they learned was that man's alcohol and this woman's violence, that those were manifestations of something that were deeper down. And so my prayer is that sharing this story with you will help you, because if you currently find yourself in a dysfunctional situation, you ain't going to get out of it by osmosis. You need to take steps to get out of that, and I hope that you'll get some help in identifying what those steps are and how to move forward. And so listen, if I can be of any assistance ever to you, just remember you can always find me at angel-cartagena.com. That's my website. It'll be wherever I post this video. And if nothing else, man, I hope that this blessed you. Take care and have a wonderful week.